Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمد رسوله. That is, I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and prayers and blessings be upon him, was the last. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. And I further bear witness that Muhammad, peace and prayers and blessings be upon him, was the last and final prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to Allah. All praise due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. God is greater, God is greater, God is greater. He is greater than anything we can possibly imagine, anything we can conceive of, anything that we see, that we engage with. He's greater than that. He's greater than that. Any situation, any piece of trouble, any kind of trouble, any situation, any harm, any good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than that. And we know that by looking at all of his magnificent signs, the wonderful, glorious signs that Allah sends to us, that Allah has given to us from day one, from first being created and molded into that clay, from our prophet Adam, alayhi salam. He has given us signs after signs after signs. From discussing, even before we were even made, the creation of the world, he has given us signs. So before we even existed, Allah has been giving us signs, giving us ayat, so that we can recognize his greatness and so that we can turn towards him and be productive and progressive. So Allah has given us wonderful signs, and I always start my khutbahs off with a sign that is connected with me. This time I'm going to start, inshallah, with an ayat and then a sign. So this ayat is Quran. It's ayat Surah 6, ayat 38. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There is not an animal that lives on the earth, nor a being that flies on its wings, but they have formed communities like you. Nothing have we omitted from the book, and they all shall be gathered to their Lord in the end. Sadaqallahu Azim. Surely Allah speaks the truth. So Allah tells us that every being, every creation, every living thing, he has made it to form communities, just like you and I. From the beings that are walking, swimming, on the earth, walking on the earth, swimming in the ocean, flying, you know, flies to birds to bats to bees to roaches, right? The worst of the worst. You know, we know they make communities, right? So all of these things, they have communities. Even the most isolated creatures that we think of to be isolated have communities. I was reading about the polar bear. And the polar bear is almost looked at as one of the most, I don't want to say disgruntled, but mean creatures in the respect that it is, you know, it's pretty violent. You know, it's pretty hard to train a polar bear in a sense, especially a wild polar bear, right? You don't see anybody riding polar bears, right? That's not what they were meant to do. So even polar bears, they are total loners. They walk this world by themselves in an environment that's desolate almost, right? That appears to be desolate. And they walk this world alone. But even polar bears have to come together, right? They have to come together to mate. They have to form communities to mate. And then they have to come together to produce offspring. They have to have a form of a community to produce offspring. So even the most angry, disgruntled, most isolated creature can become the most loving mother. Did you know that polar bears, when they're born, that's a lot of mammals, right? When they're born, or first, I don't want to go too much into it, but first, polar bears, when they meet their mate, they only stay with their mate for a couple of days because, you know, they have problems with being with each other. But they stay that small amount of time just to get the interaction done. And then it's amazing because that fertilization doesn't really happen until the mother bear has a certain amount of fat on her body, right? There's a specific amount of fat. It's called like delayed fertilization, right? So once they're mated, it doesn't automatically happen. Like in humans, you mate, and if that sperm gets to that egg, it's over with. But there's a delay within the fertilization of the egg in a polar bear until the mother reaches a certain amount of fat in her body. And so when the mother is pregnant and she reaches that amount of fat, she goes and she gets right. She tries to eat as much as she can. And she goes and she buries herself. She digs a hole. They say it's no larger than the amount, just enough room for her to turn around in, you know. That's about it. Not a large amount, but just enough to turn around. And she makes a hole just enough for her to get in. And she allows for the snow, because it's usually during the winter. She allows for the snow to cover that hole, right? And then once she's covered, locked in this very small, sounds uncomfortable to us, right? This small, tight space, eventually she gives birth, usually to twins, but maybe 2 or 3, not a lot. But these baby polar bears, they're born just like many mammals without teeth, right? They're born with very little fur, and they can't hardly see, you know. So if you were to take that polar bear, that baby polar bear, in the midwinter when that baby polar bear was born, in the Antarctica or you know the Arctic, in the Arctic, and just leave them out there in the weathering, that baby would definitely die. So Allah has made a way, and Allah tells us in the Quran, right? He said He has placed love between you, and you know, we initially it was talking about, well, you can read it as how you wanted to read it, but he's talking about relationships generally. He has placed love between the two. So much love that an angry polar bear, keep calling polar bear angry because that's how we perceive it. The polar bear who is isolated is willing to sit in there with that helpless baby polar bear, more than one, and she does not eat. She doesn't eat, she doesn't drink, she stays, she does not leave. All she does is nourish the babies. That is the only thing that she does. She nourishes and nourishes until the winter subsides and the spring and the babies are big enough to come out. Then she comes out and she's concerned about eating. So Allah has been merciful enough to give us this sign, one, and merciful enough to place love between the creatures. And just to go on to tell you further about it, you know, polar bears, as much as we say they're isolated, they keep the baby bear around them. They say sometimes between 2.5 years as they grow up, to teach them how to hunt, to teach them how to protect and to provide and create shelters for themselves. And once they've learned, then they go back to being the isolated creatures that they're comfortable with. So Allah has blessed us. That sign itself tells us the importance of community life, the importance of the love and the interaction that comes with us joining, even in the most isolated creatures. And the fact that Allah says that every community, even the most isolated to the most, forms communities. Every animal, every creature forms communities. It tells us the importance, and it tells us the necessity of those relationships. So we can look at this, we take ourselves out. It's quite similar, a mother polar bear, because she is a mammal, it's quite similar to the relationship between a mother and a child, right? The mother stays, and she's given that child, she carries that weight, right? She feeds, and then the child is born, and she nourishes that child with her own sustenance, right? With whatever it is she has. And she nourishes that child, and she cares for him, and she's willing to do whatever. Her own body is being drawn. A substance is being snatched or drawn out of her body for that child. And that same relationship, a mother will fend off the worst of enemies for that child, will love that baby, even though the baby cries and whines and, you know, can't do anything, but that love is there. And the love is also with the child, because the child becomes dependent on the mother. And that interaction, you can never break, right? The love of a mother and a child. It's like, you know, if you don't love your mother, then there's something wrong with you. Because that relationship has been built between, there is something toxic there, right? There's something toxic there. So Allah has given us that sign as well with the human, within humans. And then further on out with the relationships between ourselves, protection amongst families, protection with large communities, all of the benefits that we get from being a community, that we get from having relationships. So we can see the importance of community. We can see the importance of relationships with others. We can see the necessity and the natural, intentional drive that is placed in humans to have that necessity, and in all animals. So what happens when that is broken, right? What happens when that connection is torn? So I just want to share with you the psychological community. The psychological community has several theories on that, right? So there is, I want to share, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. There is a therapy I was looking at. I'm into cognitive behavior, right? Cognitive therapy, right? So there is a cognitive therapy. It's called schema therapy. And schema, I'm going to read just a little bit. One, schema is a in itself, it's an organized pattern of thought and behavior. It can also be described as a mental structure of preconceived ideas, a framework representing some aspect of the world, or a system of organizing and perceiving new information, right? So it's your ability to have organized thought and organized behavior that makes sense, right? Behavior that is beneficial to you in living your life. So in cognitive, in schema therapy, they actually call schemas, they only talk about the maladaptive schemas. And these are schemas, thought processes, behavior processes that are that contradict your success. If I can just put it that simple. They are pervasive, self-defeating, or dysfunctional actions and thought processes, and that people gain So these schema, right? The malfunctioning schema, um, the um, the maladaptive schema. That's the word I was looking for. The maladaptive schema. These form when there is a bad connection between in early childhood, mostly between a parent or mother and a child. So what do we do when we get these? So let me be a little more clear. I'm trying to be clear. I really like to be detail oriented, but I don't want to lose anybody. So we get these maladaptive schema when we are disassociated with our parents, with our mother. When we are placed, when a mother leaves, if a child is abandoned, right? Because that natural developmental relationship that they have with a child, with their parent, with their mother, is broken and is lost. Or when there is an isolation of one is pushed out, right, of community, or isolated or kicked out or shunned, right? Or one is feeling as if they are, because they are without the connection and that relationship with the parent or the mother, they are feeling like they're not protected. They feel in a state of fear all the time. So if a child is brought up in this respect, if that connection is broken, then you can create a maladaptive scheme. And that is a maladaptive way of thinking, a misconstrued form of thinking that is counter to your productivity, right? And what people normally do is they cope with it. And how you cope is important. So coping skills, I don't want to get into all of this. I really do, but I don't. So let's go with this, just the basic about it, because there are coping skills. There are modes where you might temporarily be acting out. You're not doing it all the time. For example, if I have been abandoned as a child, a long time ago, I've been abandoned. I can cope in several different ways, right? I can go ahead and cut myself off from the world. I can disassociate myself from any other relationship, any other friendship, any other, because I refuse to be hurt anymore, right? Or I can become overly angry. I can become upset and mad all the time because I feel like no one's looking out for me. Like I feel like there is nothing to support me. There is no one that cares for me, right? So I'm trying to talk in general terms. So there are several other different coping mechanisms, negative coping mechanisms, that one has to bear, that one can come upon from having maladaptive schema. So, of course, with the therapy, they work with addressing that. They go back to the original issue, as most cognitive therapy does, and then they help you work out the fact that they allow for you to see that you have that issue, and then they allow for you to train yourself to learn how to respond properly when you get into those modes, right? So this is one of the things, right? These are one of the issues or the symptoms, albeit a very important issue or symptom that can occur when we break the relationship that Allah has naturally made normal for us, a natural relationship that was made normal for us with our parents, with our loved ones, with our community, right? So if we are breaking these habits, if we are in a situation where we're breaking, these connections, where we are pushing out in these connections, and this is extremely important in today's time, right? And I say this because our children today are growing up, if they're growing up in this crisis, if they're growing up in this pandemic, which is going on, there is a lot of disconnect from relationships. So it goes both ways because, inshallah, there's more connection between mother and child as well. So, there may be a balance there. Well, I don't want to talk about that right now. So these connections are necessary. That is my point. And that if they are not made, then they can be very damaging to what? The thought process, to how organized our thinking is. Now I want to jump into another ayat. This is Surah 11, ayat 87. And this is, we're talking about Prophet Shuaib, right? And Prophet Shuaib was a prophet that was sent to the Magian people. So just this one ayat I want to read. It says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. They said, O Shuaib, does thy religion of prayer command thee that we leave off the worship which our fathers practice, or that we leave off doing what we like with our property? Truly thou art the one that forbeareth with faults and is right-minded. Sadaqallahu alayhi. So this is just an example, but it's mentioned in several times within the Quran, where when a prophet is brought with revelation or with guidance, the people respond and they say, this is how we found our fathers behaving or doing. These are the actions. These are the cultures that we found our fathers doing. And then even in this one, they said, do you want to stop us from the worship which our fathers practice, or that we leave off doing what we like with our property? So in looking at this, my mind went to, and this is the thinking mind, right? My mind went to the fact that these people were so caught up in their cultural practices that they had lost, as much as they had the connection between their fathers, right? They had lost the ideal connection that should have initially led them to God, right? Because when you think about, and this is something else when you think about the Magian people, they're the people of Midian, right? These are the same people that Moses went to, right, to seek shelter from when he killed a man in Egypt. These are the people who were aware of righteousness. These were the same people that can be linked back to Abraham's lineage. So it wasn't, and looking at this, just this one ayat, if you read the whole surah, as we've talked about before, there are several different prophets, we all know, right, who came to several different people who are all from a similar lineage. So it's obvious that they had some kind of connection with their father, with their mother, with their community, but they have broken off the connection that is most important, the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is because they got caught up in their cultural behaviors. They got caught up in the existing of what was going on current, and they limited their thinking to only the culture, So we have been blessed. We have been blessed because we have been given an understanding that goes beyond just our culture. One, as African-American people, we have a culture, but we were cut off from our parents a long time ago. So that strengthening that bond that makes you want to hold on to that is not so strong as someone who is still got roots and connections to Ireland, right? Still got people in Ireland, right? That they talk to, that they communicate with, the culture that they developed wasn't stripped from that. So it's a mercy and a blessing if you want to look at it that way. But two, we have been given direction from somebody who has promoted the continual connection, right? Not just a connection with your father. Yes, connect with your mother. Yes, connect with your father. And then look at your father's father and your father's father. And if you are connecting with that, with the righteous thinking of that, you will eventually end up with a pure and strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at, if they were to continue down that lineage, so we weren't just sideswiped with just the culture of Islam. We weren't just told to go and listen to a sheikh, right? And nothing less. We weren't just told to just do the 5 pillars and nothing less. We were told to study. We were taught to study. We were taught to study the religion to study the book, to study the Quran, the original. We were taught to study that. And we were also taught to think, to question, to ask questions, and not be afraid of questioning, right? To have that mind of Ibrahim, alayhi salam, to be a thinker. Imam Muhammad told us, you know, man means mind, right? He told us all of these different things. He says that, and I had written it down somewhere. So Imam Muhammad provided us with a lot of this insight, but not just him. He told us not to just look at him, right? But look beyond him. Go to the Quran yourself and read. So that was a gift that was given to us. But when we look at those people who say, well, this is what we found our fathers doing, it reminds me of some people who came from a different environment, a different country, and say they're Muslim, but they're not acting Muslim. They're doing all of what they're supposed to do. They fast Ramadan, right? They don't eat pork, right? They don't drink wine. But yeah, that's a questionable one. And somebody look at me like, well, some of them. So, but they say this is what we found our fathers doing. And yes, I'm Muslim, and they claim the title of Islam, of Muslim, just because there is a genetic connection to it, right? And it's the same thing, you know, with a lot of religions, not just Islam, with Judaism or Jewish people. They say, hey, I'm Jewish. Why? Because my mother's Jewish. Okay. Do you believe what Jews believe? Do you practice that? In Islam, do you believe what Muslims believe? Do you truly, sincerely believe what Muslims believe? Do you practice that? That's what makes you Muslim. Even as Christians, do you believe in Christ? Do you practice that? That's what makes you a true follower of Christ, right? But there are so many people that say, this is what we found our fathers doing, and this is why we do it. They don't even question that. They don't question what they found their fathers doing. They don't question it. We have been gifted with an ideal, a concept that allows for us to be freely with our questioning, right? It promotes us to question, and it promotes us to investigate, to study, to hold close to the Quran, not just hold it high on the shelf, metaphorically, yes, but to take it down and to read it and to study it and to engage with it. Yes, we do all of the cultural things, the 5 pillars, we do our prayers, we do all of that. So we have been blessed with this. What am I getting to, right? How am I? So, and I see my time, I'm aware. My point is the connection is necessary, but it's beyond just one level of connection, right? And so what do we do? How do we reconnect when we have disconnected from that? What kind of therapy do we need to go through, right? To uplift ourselves, to get back into that natural state of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I talked about the mother at first, but we all know beyond the mother is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of times we learn our religion and our value and the desire to worship God through our mothers, right? Through that love and connection that we have with our mother. So we don't want to be those people who get caught up in saying this is what we found our fathers doing. Because if we do that, one, it's going to limit us. We'll only do what our fathers did. We won't see progression. We'll only be as strong as our fathers. We won't be able to stand on their shoulders. When you go into a PhD program, they have you got to read all of the work, which we have to do. You have to read whatever subject is you're going to study. You got to read what everybody else wrote on that subject. And you need to know that. But then, in order for you to graduate, you have to add some kind of thinking of your own to contribute to that community of education, right? To that community of thought. So we want to go beyond just standing on, just being like our fathers, right? And not only that, we want to carry on the flag, we want to carry on what our fathers have started. And the thing is, if we don't do that, we will end up with with a diseased mind. We will end up cut and separated from the original creator, from the most righteous of our fathers, from their practices and their understandings. And we'll end up with all of those issues that we have that comes along with that separation. There's depression that comes with it. There is incorrect actions, most importantly, incorrect thought processes. We have been given the ability to think correctly. We've been given that. And before I close, I just want, on this part, I want to just say, if we understand the importance of those relationships, if we understand the importance of the connection between mother and child, mother and father, father and child, between husband and wife, between families, between communities, between friends, understand the importance of those connections with Allah. Allah has blessed it with love. If we understand that, something that, and we understand the reasoning, then we should protect it. We should protect it. You know, what does Allah tells every, look at all the mother, she's, might get flack for this, right? The mother, she nourishes and she cares and she provides. The father, this is all Quran, right? The father provides and protects. We are all vicegerents too, right? These are all things that we have to do. If you have something that is supporting you, that is making you stronger, that keeps you thinking correctly, if you have those things, then you are to protect it. You are to provide for it. You are to support it. You are to nourish it. You are to care for it. Just like you would your car. Just like, well, even beyond that, things that work for you, that benefit you, you are to take care of those things. We are to take care of those things. And we do that specifically because we don't want to care just enough to uphold the basic principle, the culture of a thing, right? We don't want to just uphold the rituals that we've been given. We want to uphold the thought process, right? We want to promote that kind of thinking, that free thought, that desire to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to question and to learn and to study. We want to promote that. And we have to do that, yes, within our children. We have to start doing that. You know, we'll send them to school to learn all of these other different things, but we have to make sure that we are having them study and learn those things that are important. Yes, with children, with our friends and families, with our community, we have to promote that. And not only just studying those things, but promoting that thought process. And how do you do that? There are a number of ways, but the best way is by an example. I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna break, inshallah. My wife always, when we are raising, when the kids were young, right? They were young, and the kid will do something that was out of whack. And you don't have to live. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did this as well. So when the kid did something that was out of whack, she would talk them through. She wouldn't say, "What? Don't do that." Smack the hand, or maybe, I don't know. But she would talk them through, and she would say, let's think. What are we doing here? How is that going to help you out? You know, so you're walking through, and believe it or not, this is cognitive therapy, right? This is cognitive therapy. You're getting that person to start that thought process to say, And what does it create? It creates a mind that reflects, a reflective mind, one that looks at what it is that they are doing when they make a step, when they make an action, or prior to making an action. When they make it, then reflect and say, how did that go for me? You know, was that beneficial to me? Where did I get this from? Why am I always, going to the club to have fun? Where did I get that from? Why am I always watching TV every day of the week when I'm eating? Where did this come from? These questionings, these reflective processes, it allows for us to create a habit, which becomes a positive schema, right? A positive thought process. So we have to take our thought process and push it and promote it. And we do that by first being the model for that, by first addressing our own maladaptive schemas, and by retracing our steps and going back and being reflective Muslims, being reflective people. and being inquisitive and being immersed in the study of Al-Islam. ربنا في الدنيا آتنا حسنة وآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. آمين. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. All praises due to Allah. Praises due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. This last piece, I'm just going to share out. I've taken a lot of time, so I'm going to share out the importance of that community upliftment, the importance of keeping that connection and making sure that we are developing that community. And I've always said that I'm going to push back always the importance of what we are doing right now, which is building a community, a masjid / community center, right? Because one, we know that connection is important. The connection between people is important. The connection within communities is important. And we are building a masjid that is not just for, it's for our support, right? As Muslims, as the community. But we are also trying to think beyond, and actually it's not beyond, because it's not beyond what our forefathers did. We're trying to build something that in addition to supporting our 5 prayers, supporting the education of the Muslim that are here, right? Supporting the needs and the desires of the needs of the Muslims that are in the community. We also want to extend outward, and we want to reach out and assist the community that the masjid is in. That's nothing new, right? That's been going on for a long time. But we don't see that often in a lot of these larger masjids. We don't see much of that. And to be placed in a community, when I tell you about all of the issues that go along with having a maladaptive schema, when I tell you that the symptoms are that a child, right? When a child is separated from his parent, when a child has been left alone or isolated or discouraged or treated negatively, abused. When I tell you that the symptoms are they act out violently, right? When I tell you that the symptoms are they disconnect from everybody else, they don't know how to show love, right? When I tell you these symptoms, that they have hate, they have anger and hate in them. What does it sound like? Huh? It sounds like, it sounds like a lot of the kids that I work with, and I know it is. It sounds like a lot of the young people in our community. It sounds like these guys who are out here carjacking people, right? It sounds like these people who are shooting each other. It sounds like them. And who is giving them schema therapy? Who is providing some kind of understanding? Who is trying to change their thought process? Who is trying to reach out to them and have them reflect on what it is that they are doing? Reflect on why they're doing what they're doing. They found their fathers doing it. All the guys were doing it. Well, ain't nobody else coming to get me. I got to do for mine. Who else is looking for that? Why are we not addressing, okay, if I provided something for you to financially uplift you, and I told you what, and I walked you through the thinking and how that is negatively affecting you, would you change? Who is giving them those opportunities? That is our job. We are from those communities. These are our brothers and sisters. We're not prophets, no, but we carry that same responsibility because we come from that. All prophets were they were sent to their own people, And Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he's talked adamantly about taking care of the orphans, right? Taking care of the orphans. Quran talks about taking care of the orphans, those who've been torn apart from a necessary connection of protection, of encouragement, of nourishing, of all of the things that a child needs. So when I tell you that we are talking about building a masjid, we are talking about not just building a masjid for us and our benefits. Yes, we are. We are addressing our issues because we are a community too. We have needs. We must keep those things tight. But we are also talking about building a masjid that is going to address the needs of those who are around her, stretching out to the larger community, and on and on and on. The community, it becomes larger and larger, and we need to address that. I didn't say it. So we need to make sure that we are addressing that need, and making sure that connection is there. That is our job. That is our duty. The most important thing in taking that back and reflecting, the most important thing to understand out of all of what I said is, one, that a community, an environment can change a person, right? An environment can take the best of persons who had the best of intentions and change them. And then on the other end of that, an individual can change an environment. An individual can come with the best of thinking and possibly and make his or her environment much better for him or her, and for anybody else that crosses through that environment. And I got much proof. We all got proof of that. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, right? Prophet Muhammad, he came up in a society that was totally backwards, right? Totally backwards. I'm not afraid to say that. We all know that. And he brought, with the help of his connection, his initial connection, his initial, don't want to say parent, right? We ain't going there, but his initial rub, right? He connected with him, and he was able to change that entire environment, the entire environment, and change the future of the entire environment, the future of the world. On the other end of that, was he able to do it as one person? So Prophet Muhammad as well, we can argue that if he was raised, he lost his mother, he lost his father, right? He lost his connection, that connection that we were just talking about. And had he, we can argue, had he had that connection with his mother and father, he might have been a little more stronger attached to that culture, right? He might have been. He got separated he got shunned. He even tried to go to a party, but he fell asleep, right? He couldn't even go to the party. So in a sense, his environment that Allah created for him in that little bubble of a world helped to shape who he was, right? And helped to arrange and make him ready for the journey and the mission that he had. So we can look at all of it. I mean, I can go prophet to prophet. We can see both ranges. So the most important thing that I want you to understand, and I want us all to understand, is that the environment shapes the person, and on the same end of that, the person can shape the environment, which means with the help of Allah, all changes are possible. That's what that means. With the help of Allah, all change is possible. So the grimiest of grimy person can be changed. The worst of worst environment can be changed, as long as we keep those connections. And of course, how do we keep them? We stay connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We stay connected. We remember that the schema of that we have, right? The thought process, to investigate, to study. We study. But most importantly, we stay connected with the ultimate connection. Imam Muhammad said, you should follow, and I was looking for it, but I lost it. So he said, follow the logic to its conclusion, right? And you follow logic to its conclusion. So that is the thought process that we have. And if you do that with a sincere heart, right, you always end up with going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you always end up, as Prophet Abraham did, following the logic to its conclusion. Any logic to this complete conclusion ends up at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's the conclusion, right? The purpose for everything. That's why things work the way they work. That's how everything is aligned. So if we do that with a sincere heart and we maintain our purity, then we will be successful, and we will be able to uplift our community. We'll be able to keep those connections strong, and we'll be able to know, like Imam Muhammad said, that, give me a good future. But it's not just his future, it's our future. It's the future of Adam alayhi salam, the future of Ibrahim, the future of Moses, all of these people, all of our lineage. It's their future. And we are all connected. We are all connected. So let's hug them babies. Let's talk to our children. Let's teach them how to think, how to process. Let's talk to each other. Let's practice good processing. Let's practice good reflection. Let us do those things. Let's sit down on our own couch, right, and give ourselves cognitive therapy or therapy. And let's do the things that we know we need to do. Let's most importantly keep ourselves connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because with him, all change is possible, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Come to salam.